Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We are having a look at the aviation packs in this video, and we're going to have a look at the airplanes and also the helicopters. If you want to see any of the packs, I'll leave a pinned comment which has the link to all the packs and also the partner link to support the channel. So let's get into it, let's have a look at all of them, and let's see what's going on. First of all, we have the Wyvern S4. This is on discount. As you can see, it's 4.7 in ground, 4.3 in air, and 4.3 in naval. This is an incredibly fast vehicle at its BR, and also does quite a lot of stuff well. It has the 4 Hispanos, meaning that you have a good amount of damage, especially since they're Mark 5s. You also have access to this big old engine right here, the Siddeley Python 3 turboprop, which the max thrust of 500 kgf and max power 4000 means that you can really hammer around the place. In air, it gets an air spawn because it's a strike aircraft, so you spawn at speed and you can get to anywhere you want very quickly. You get access to bombs, you get access to torpedoes, you get access to rockets. You can be useful in multiple game modes with this thing and generally do very well. For me, the way to play this is to basically run the 1000s, use it in ground or naval, and just bish bash bosh bang bang. But in air, it's also a pretty good grinder because you can just take ground targets, you can hit bases, or you can be a secondary fighter because of the speed. You don't have the best turn, and you do lose energy pretty quick in a turn. But apart from that, you know, the actual job that this thing's supposed to do is outstanding at doing. And at rank 4, you can grind through the tech tree super quickly with this and do dailies with it and also specials very easily too. It's a fantastic mid-tier aircraft, and whenever it comes on sale, it's definitely worth looking at. The A5C is on sale again. I feel like this was on sale a few weeks ago, but this time it's 50% off, and the vehicle itself is fine. It's one of those that relies heavily on specific ammunition choices and also munition choices, but generally it works well. It's got good speed, it has access nowadays to the incendiary bombs, which may not seem like quite a lot, but since they buff these and the amount of damage they can do to bases, it means that grinding is a lot easier to do. The other part is, of course, it has the 2 magic wands, which are very good boomsticks for 10.7 and can do really well. In an up tier, you'll face a lot of countermeasures. At your tier, you'll see a lot of countermeasures too. So you have to at least be a little bit careful in terms of how you use them. But generally, this BR works very well for a vehicle like the A5. You know, you can run the 18 flares. You don't really need chaff at this BR. There's not many vehicles that will hit you with stuff like that. The 23s are pretty much useless. You're there because you're using the incendiaries and because you're using the magics. If you decide to take this into ground, I mean, it's a little bit lower BR, so it might be a bit better, but it's still not great. It's got very limited bomb loads, even though it has the CCIP, which is nice. There are generally better options. So this vehicle, it's literally just a magic launcher. If you've ever used magics, you know how powerful they are, and you know how good this can be. But nowadays, at the BR that it's at, it's a little bit harder to play, but it still should be fine as long as you pick your targets. The Su-39 is on sale. This is one of those vehicles where, if left alone, can be incredibly powerful, mainly because of the ordnance it has access to, but there are once again just kind of better options instead of it. It does get access to the R-73s, which are the IRCCM, good old all-aspect missiles, and also you can bring 2 R-60Ms with it too, so you can technically go a little bit crazy in terms of the air-to-air stuff, and also you do get a bunch of different weaponry options too. The problem with it is actually getting to the battlefield without getting hammered. This thing is really high in BR, and even though it has some defenses like the good old IRCM on the back and countermeasures, you're still going to get hammered because even if people can't set up properly on you, you're so slow they just have to loop and do it again. So your main way of surviving is to not be able to be seen, and that is not the easiest thing in the world. This vehicle does have a radar pod on it. It also has access to the Mercury targeting pod, which is pretty interesting. It's also one of those vehicles that does have some pretty hefty kind of missiles that it can use in ground, but at the same time, there are once again just better options in the tech tree. So for me, if you want a grinding vehicle, this is not it. This is not the one to go for, because there'll be a lot of matches where you'll spawn and you'll just die and not really do anything. Whereas in general terms, so, you know, if you have a look at a lot of other vehicles, they have much more of an opportunity to do more for the battlefield. If you're looking for a quick CAS aircraft that you can bring into ground and hammer people with stuff like the S-250s, for example, or even some of the missiles, then yeah, it's a great pick if you don't want to grind through the tech tree. But in every other sense, it's not great. The F-4EJ ADTW is on sale as well. This one is one of the worst Phantoms, but it's also at a low BR, so it kind of counteracts it. The big issue with this Phantom is it gets access to AIM-9Ps, which are some of the weaker IR missiles that are around. They're much more short range than stuff like the Gs, for example, or the Hs, which are on stuff like the navalized Phantoms, so you do have to be a bit careful with that. It does have AIM-7Es, doesn't get E2s or anything like that, so pretty box standard ones, and the other part of it, which is also a bit of a bummer, is this radar. The radar isn't the best, and that means that using some of the semi-actives is quite tough to do. You're still a Phantom though, so you have a lot of afterburner thrust, you have access to the CCIP and the EEGS and all of that great stuff, and at the same time, you do have a ridiculous amount of random loads. You don't get any incendiaries, and, you know, the fact is a lot of rockets will very much weigh you down, but from the fact that this thing got lowered in BR, and the fact that this doesn't have to just be used as a bomb truck, I feel like this one is actually in a pretty positive space right now. I think I would actually really enjoy playing through this. The only problem with it is you literally just face vehicles that are better than you, which are the same as you. Stuff like the F-4S, for example, and also other machines. You do have quite a lot of countermeasures, which is quite nice, but I feel like this vehicle is in a pretty good position because they moved down a lot of vehicles recently and also put up the F-14s, which are kind of a pretty heavy predator for this vehicle. So in terms of grinding out Japan, there's probably not a better option. I feel like this is the way to go. The J35XS is also on sale. This one is in a much better position than it used to be, basically because a lot of its predators got put up in BR, and also it got put down in BR. So you can see now it's 11-0 in air. It's not very useful in ground, by the way, just because of the fact it doesn't have a ton of actual useful ordnance. You can see here you have the rockets, but they used to be good for hitting bases, but they aren't anymore because of the fact that people were abusing stuff like this to hit bases. So nowadays you have to go like the air-to-air roll, and generally it can do okay with it. It does have a few factors that make it pretty rough. You do have obviously 6 of the RB-24Js, which is super nice, and since this is a dogfighting aircraft, you can actually do a lot of work with these things, which is great. It has good speed, it can turn very well, and burn a lot of energy while doing it, but it can accelerate to get back up. It does have the 30mm can as well as a secondary to the missiles. The countermeasures, it only has 12 of them. That is tough, but nowadays you only really have to take flares, so that definitely helps. And the other problem is it doesn't have an RWR, so you can't tell if you're being locked by things, and this is the BR where you start getting into semi-active stuff, so that can be a bit of a problem too. It's in a much better position than it used to be a little bit ago, but still not in the greatest position. The F-4EJ Phantom II for the UK is on sale. This one gets access to some pretty fun secondary armaments and also gets quite a nice radar attached to it. It's not the best Phantom that goes to stuff like the F-4S, for example, but the F-4EJ is very similar to the F-4S in how it's set up, so it's going to also have a really nice time. You know, you have access to the good old Sky Flashes, which are the dogfight missiles, so you can get in there, use the semi-actives very effectively. You have AIM-9Gs, you don't have AIM-9Hs, but that's fine. AIM-9Gs are very similar to Hs, and also have a very long burn time, which is basically why you want to go for something like this. You do have an external pod, unfortunately, if you want to bring the 20mm, which you always should want to do, and then also you're kind of limited in the secondary armaments options. You don't have incendiaries, and you don't have the crazy bomb loads that some of the other Phantoms get. But for me, using this thing as a dogfighter, as a vehicle to go after others, just like a lot of the Phantoms, is massively underappreciated in the game, and I feel like a lot of people just see these things as bomb trucks, and they're just not. They're actually at BRs where they can work pretty well. But most people would probably take it like this, so you just take the bombs, you hit the bases, and then you go after enemies. But this is pretty heavy and can be a little bit rough on the vehicle, but if you decide to just go air-to-air and just hammer things, you will actually have a great time with this. And this vehicle does have countermeasures, it has everything else that you would want. You know, it does generally work very well. I just wish that people gave it a bit more of a chance, especially in the current matchmaking. And now you don't get as up-tiered as much, it should be in a much better place. The good old TAF is also on sale, the F-104S for Italy. It's 11.3 in air and 11.0 in ground. That's because in ground it has some pretty rough options. But when it comes to air, you can bring a bunch of weird and wonderful loadouts. You do have access to AIM-7s, but I'm pretty sure you have to lose the gun in order to use them. So the general way of playing this thing is just running 6 AIM-9Ps and then hammering people with them. Problem with this is it doesn't really fit the aircraft. So the whole point of the F-104 is that you go fast, you engage on an angle, you hammer with the guns and the missiles, you go out, and then you come back in, right? You just do that over and over again, and that works very well. The problem is the AIM-9Ps are more short-range missiles instead of long-range ones, so it's a little bit harder to set them up on targets as you're going around, and then also at the same time, you are at a BR of 11.3 where you aren't the fastest thing anymore. And your radar isn't very good, and also you only have 60 countermeasures, and since you can't turn amazingly well, if you aren't faster than the enemies, what's going to end up happening is you're going to get chased down and you're going to get annihilated because you don't have anything else under the bonnet to be able to survive. So for me, when I look at the TAF, I look at a vehicle that struggles at the thing it's supposed to be good at, and that's why the F-104s are very, very hard to balance, especially stuff like this. So in a down tier, you'll crush everything because it won't be able to touch you. At every other tier, you are going to run into enemies where they will be able to catch you, and you won't be able to fulfill the playstyle. The TU1's on sale, and they buffed it pretty aggressively in the last update, so it's a little bit better than it used to be. They gave it access to the APHE rounds for the 45s, which if they pen, they just decimate vehicles. It does have a good bomb load too, obviously the 3-1000s, and if you want to bring this, you bring it in ground. In air, it's pretty dull. It can't really do the job that it's supposed to. In naval, it can do pretty well, but there are better options. In ground, you know, you can actually do pretty good with this thing, and it works well. My problem with the TU1, though, is I think stuff like the TU2s just do a better job than it, and at the same time, the TISMAR. If you already have that, there's not really much point in the TU1. But if you want it at this specific BR bracket, instead of running other stuff that is around in the Soviet tech tree, then you can do. But I just think there are just so many better options. I kind of feel bad for this thing. It feels like one of those vehicles that came out a bit late for it to be useful, and not really too surprising to see it being removed from sale. The A6E is one of those really annoying vehicles that you never want to face because it has access to some really ridiculous weaponry for its BR range. So because you have the secondary loadouts, you can bring a bunch of different stuff. So in air, you can bring 3 AIM-9Ls and then also a gun if you feel like it, or even just 4 AIM-9Ls or 4 guns, but mainly you want to take the AIM-9Ls. The AIM-9Ls are very good, they're very powerful at this BR, and the TRAM is quite maneuverable, so as long as you don't get jumped on by too many things, you can dogfight pretty efficiently, and you can do pretty good with it. You also have 60 countermeasures to keep you alive, which I generally think is enough for the BR bracket, since most people are slinging IRs. When it comes to the other parts of the TRAM, as long as you can get above radars, which you can do pretty efficiently in this thing, you are busted at the BR that it's at 10.7. Basically all you do is you just go really high, just like the AMX, and The IR seekers cannot lock onto you because you don't give off enough of a heat signature because your engines are not very big, and then you can just keep popping people over and over and over again with the guided munitions. You don't even need a pod. The vehicle itself has a pretty powerful setup when it comes to its general look. You can see there the optics are 13 times. It has an IRST auto tracker, has a very good RWR as well, so you can tell when you're getting done. And then it also, of course, has the radar, which doesn't really do anything. So yeah, this thing can be incredibly annoying to face in ground. Not just with the skippers, but the general paveways, and if you know how to use it, especially since it's at the same BR nowadays as the Abrams, you can run it in that 10-7 area, and you can be very, very prolific with it. It's super powerful in that way. The Focke-Wulf 190 D13 is finally being removed from the store. It's been there since pretty much the beginning, and it's always not a terrible pickup. It's gone down in BR a bunch of times, so basically makes it a lot easier to play. The vehicle is just a standard Dora with 3 20mm MG151s, which makes the armament incredibly good. The Junkers engine has a lot of power behind it. It's just the meta doesn't fit it and hasn't for a long time. Basically, the meta is meet in the middle at mid-altitude, go downwards, and then hammer. The Focke-Wulf 190 is a high-altitude vehicle that you want to intercept things at high altitude and then force them down and then hammer, just like the TARS and also many other vehicles. So it doesn't really fit in the current game, which is why it kept going down in BR. They did buff its elevator though, so at least it is a little bit better at low speed turning. I personally think the Dora is a fantastic vehicle. I've enjoyed playing the Tech Tree ones quite a lot, for the specific playstyle that it fits, but right now it just doesn't really fit how most people play. So if you do decide to play the Dora, you have to play it in a specific way, and you might end up a lot of the times where you have like 1 or 2 kills, but the rest of your team is dead because they decided to dogfight at low altitudes, and you're just kind of sat there wondering what life is about and pontificating. And that's kind of the problem with this thing. It's a great vehicle, but doesn't fit how people play right now. The Greek Apache is on sale. This one you basically pick up if you don't want to grind through the helicopter tree and you don't want to GE the AH-64A. It's one of those vehicles that's fine. You know, it has access to the Hellfires, has the thermals, has the Stingers, has all the standard stuff that these American helicopters have. You'll have a good time in it in ground, and you'll be able to run it with the clickbait. The problem is it's 11.7, and there's a lot of much better vehicles in terms of CAS, and also in terms of SAMs that will just kind of shut you down in this thing, because it doesn't have all the factors of defense that a lot of the other vehicles have. It does have access to an IRCM, but it doesn't have a MOR or anything like that, and it doesn't have any automatic systems. So what will happen is you get locked by a Panzer, and you'll die. And that's just how this goes. So on specific maps, it'll be very powerful, just like a lot of helicopters will, but on a lot of others, it won't be. This one isn't the longbow Apache, so the optics are right here. This means that you can't hide the vehicle without getting shot at. Some of the other vehicles, the optics are up here, so it makes it a little bit easier to be able to shoot targets and not get shot back, but that's not the case with this Apache, so you do have to be very careful in terms of where you actually engage stuff. The F-4S is also in the house. This vehicle is criminally under-BR'd in air. It has been for a long time, and you can use it in pretty much any way you want, and that's what makes it so powerful. The thing about the F-4S is, if you have a look at its loadouts, it has so many of them, which are really, really good. Whether it's just the bombs that you can carry and just nuke bases with, or whether it's the rockets that you can bring if they decide to nuke the bombs, which is what they did, and even the fire bombs or the incendiaries that you can bring to knock out bases. And that's only talking about something that just makes it easy to grind and get through, whether you play air realistic or air sim. But then you also have a ridiculously good air-to-air loadout, and that's where this thing shines. You have 4 AIM-9Hs, which are the better versions of the Gs. For me, I prefer the kind of G line of missiles, just because of the fact that they have more of a long burn time, so therefore you can fire them from much further away. It suits this Phantom really well. And then also the AIM-7F Sparrows, which coupled with this very powerful radar at this BR, works extremely well for the vehicle. Now, some of the F-4S's friends did go up in BR, and some of the things that it dominated did go down in BR, but it still is in a fantastic position to be able to annihilate stuff. It still has the very powerful engines, and you always will have some kind of weaponry that will be able to deal with the enemy. It just means that you're going to have to learn how semi-active radar homing missiles work, you're going to have to learn how those mechanics work in general, and you'll have a fantastic time with this vehicle. The fact that this thing is such a low BR and is easily one of the better, if not the best Phantoms, is nuts to me, because it's so good. The K50 is busted. It has been busted for a long time. Seems like they forgot to put it up as well in the last set of BR changes. Hilarious, since everything else went up. But yeah, what can I say? This vehicle struggles in only one area, and that is the people playing it. The optics are good. It doesn't have access to thermals, so therefore it's a little bit harder. You have to actually use your eyes, but it has the Vikirs, which outrange a lot of vehicles that you'll face, and are multi-purpose. They're good at destroying air targets because they have a proximity, and they're good at destroying ground targets too. This makes this vehicle very annoying. It also has a maw, so it protects itself, and there's nothing you can do against it. The fact is, the K50 is one of the easiest helicopter premiums in the game to play. It is insanely overpowered and has been for the longest time, and that gets shown pretty much all the time whenever you play this BR range. The only thing, as I said, that limits this thing is the people playing it. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.